EX-SCISSION by Ike Riva. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. It was a dark and stormy night. Autumn rain pelted the worn facade. Wind howled against an open shutter. He scanned the dim room, furtive eyes crawling over the nothing it contained, and stepped through the broken window. Shattered glass gave way to marble under his mud-caked boots. Empty halls echoed his foreign footsteps. A streak of lightning split the sky. Solemn patios, flanked by Spartan rooms, mouldered under the hollow guard of lonely balconies. Stagnant garden ponds rippled with the color of old bruises. Cobwebbed corridors connected them all. The sound of thunder dulled the further he was drawn into the edifice, until it was nothing but a murmur. Eventually, the rain itself was gone. He came across the standing mirror many times, but, out of suspicion, avoided it. He retraced his steps, and it was during these early retreats that he first felt the pang of panic in his chest. The purpose of that ancient villa on the cliff quickly became evident to him. A labyrinth. It was clearer yet every time that he came across the mirror, after he had time to ponder the details. Why no bedrooms, bathrooms, or servants' quarters? Why the fractal-like repetition of hallways, patios, and rooms? The only question left to him was the purpose of it all. All branches seemed to lead to the room with the mirror at its center. A focal point, he thought, which must have been the architect's intentional design. When he'd built up the resolve to stand before it, his twin held his gaze for too long. Both blinked sluggishly. Then he averted their eyes. He scrutinized the back of that out-of-place-looking glass, trying to find a maker's mark in vain. Every inch of that ornamented wooden frame was as immaculately smooth as the mirror's hammered silver. No other room contained any furniture. Statuary and bird baths lay broken and overturned on the cracked patios, disappearing under generations of grass. Green cataracts rippled over surface pond water. The two of them were the only things of any shape or kind within that unsigned desolation. It was no comfort. He ran through the halls at first. A nervous energy racked his frame, compelling him to move forward. Forward only. Nothing could stop him, not the repetitions, not the dreaded returns to the mirror room. Then, exhaustion stopped him. His energy was spent, and he once again rounded the corner, trembling, into the one-walled room. The mirror stood facing away from him, in the middle of that domed circle, when he collapsed, of fatigue and fright. He woke up shivering, with the moon high in the belt of the sky. The storm was gone, but the silence that replaced it was deafening. Careful steps led him before the glass, where his reflection held his gaze for a moment. Then it looked away in disgust. The thief stepped back as it rebuked him, shedding tears which quickly gave way to anger. His twin lectured him on what he'd have done differently, and why, and where, and how. Every criticism that had once been damned by glass was let loose upon him. His life was vivisected, and every character flaw minutiously considered in the prognosis. He tried running, but the reflections' shouts were magnified by some design of the labyrinthine halls until they boomed from all directions. Inevitably, he once again found himself in the mirror's dome. "And do you know what's absolutely rich?" The reflection thrust its finger towards the concave roof, punctuating the harangue. "Only I know the way out." A wolfish grin spread across the mimic's face, persisting as they struck a one-sided deal, unanimously. The two men would switch sides. The once reflection would live free, and the once man would live as the shadow of the other. Every 5 years they'd switch again, and so on until both died together. A far more reasonable arrangement than most other people, except Ptolemy II, have had with their reflections. The change was instant and imperceptible. No need to even step through the mirror. Neither his breath nor his gaze had escaped the dominion of the other. He stole glances through bartered eyes, drew breath into alien lungs as it walked through penumbral vastness with measured ease. Within half a day, their selves were at the broken window. It was almost dying of thirst when it bent down to drink. He felt cool stream water on his lips, soaking into their threadbare clothes. But he was not quenched. He felt wind on wet fabric as it struck against skin and the warmth of stew-drenched bread. He felt the give of thick crust against its teeth and the powdery flour at the bottom of a fresh loaf. But he was not filled. It chewed too little and swallowed much of their food whole. When he was with people again, and its face contorted with a smile or squeezed into a wink, he did not mean it. It did things he did not want to do, and spoke things he did not believe. He lost old friends and found new. Novel habits dethroned his familiar comforts. His thoughts were his only sanctum, for the private journey to the bottom of the mind can take with it no companions. Whenever the invisible hand that moved him brought them forth before a mirror, he could not stand the gloating, knowing eyes of his reflection. The only comfort left to him was the occasional connection that he felt when a curious panic behind others' eyes betrayed the truth. Their shared, reflective nature. Author's note: I wrote this story down after spending some time with an old man on a broken-down elevator in Madrid. There was a mirror with us, and I pointed out to him that his reflection looked strangely panicked in the eyes. He laughed loudly and told me this tale. I said I was a writer. He answered that he had a feeling, and then I asked him if I could copy it down. He agreed on the condition that I not describe him, and especially not his reflection, at all. When I asked him if he'd held up his side of the bargain, he laughed again. When he did, a golden tooth winked in the sterile light. In the mirror, panic was deep set in its eyes.